Welcome back into Biblical Economics. BI 300 is the title of our course. And now we begin to ask a very simple question, yet a very complicated question. It's a question that leaves most people actually in a state of perplexity. They are perplexed by the question because they're convinced they know what the answer is. And let me explain a couple of concepts of what is economics. Economics affects every single person on planet Earth. Doesn't matter if you come from the richest country, materialistically speaking, from the poorest country. Economics is a system that you have to understand, and it's a concept that transcends all cultures, all political, social strata. You need to understand that. And one of the biggest problems that I find in traveling literally to all these churches around the world and holding these conferences everywhere that we go is how many pastors do not understand economics. And as a result, they've never taught their people economics. And this is exactly what I have done to bring our people to an understanding, what does the Word of God actually say? So I want to draw your attention to that here. And for those of you who are tuning in, okay, by way of our video, okay, you should have downloaded your notes by now, as not like the ones that are here already have them. So I want to draw your attention to this, okay? So here's the question. What is economics? This has absolutely everything to do that we're going to unpack in this particular course. Now, we can begin the process of understanding economics by first being clear as to what economics means. We have to be very clear. What does it actually mean? Not what your cultures told you, not what the local businessman told you down in the market, in your village, or by the river, by the mountain, by a tree. I want you to understand it. To know what economics is, we must first know what an economy is. Okay? So you have to understand, what is an economy? Okay, so now we come to this question. Okay, so what is economics? So what is an economy? And you go, well, brother, I thought this was a Bible class. I didn't come here for a business class. You see, this is where you missed the whole point. That's why you are where you are. So this is the question we want to look at. What is an economy? Now, most people reduce economy or economics to this is how they reduce it. Well, you get money, you spend money. Right? You get money, you spend money. Isn't that true? Isn't that the most basic definition that people will come up with? You get money, you spend money. That's it. How do I get it? Because I'm going to spend it. And that's typically how most pastors look at it. It's typically how a lot of people come into church. This is how they live their lives. It's getting to give, getting to spend. It's just passing through your hands. That's all it is. This is how people look at economics, okay? So I want you to understand, okay? So to know what economics is, we must first know what an economy is. Perhaps most of us think of an economy as a system for the production and the distribution of the goods and services we use in everyday life. Now, that is true as far as it goes, but it does not go far enough. Now, just think about it. Just think with me. The Garden of Eden, right? God established the Garden of Eden. He put Adam and Eve in there, right? Just think about the Garden of Eden with me for a moment, okay? Now, the Garden of Eden was a system for the production and the distribution of goods and services, right? But, listen to me carefully. Let's take the Garden of Eden, okay? Now, an economy, okay, you have to understand this, okay, is usually a system, right? It's usually a system of production and distribution of goods, right, which is products, right, and services, right? That's usually what an economy is, right? This is how most people understand it, right? Now, the Garden of Eden, okay? Think about it. It was a system. It was a system of production and a distribution of goods and services. That it was. But it was not an economy. Remember the question. Economy. It was an economical system, but it was not an economy. There is a big difference between this word economics and economy. Huge difference between those two. These are two distinct concepts. Which is the reason why our people in our churches are in trouble, and why the church itself is in trouble, and why the preacher is dying of hunger, and he's got to work 2 and 3 jobs to provide for his family and still do the ministry, and they're struggling. Am I anywhere near this? Am I anywhere near the truth of this? I was in the Philippines, and the preacher's getting paid 2 chickens a month. That's his salary. That's wrong of what's going on. Everywhere I go, the preacher doesn't have time for the study of the Word of God, the proclamation of the Word of God, the expositional teaching and preaching of the Word of God. He just doesn't have time because he's working just to try to feed his family. And so is everybody else in the church, because they have missed the entire understanding of something that's very basic to human life on earth. Now, the Garden of Eden was a system for the production of goods and services and the distribution of those goods. Yes, it was. But it was not an economy. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment with me. I'm going to go very painfully slow. Why? Because everything was available in the Garden of Eden. Right? In the Garden of Eden, God provided everything, right? Listen, everything was in unlimited, abundant supply. Right? In the Garden of Eden. It was a system of production and distribution of goods and services, but it was not, listen to me, was not an economy. You and I, we live in an economy. The Garden of Eden was a system for the production and distribution of goods and services, but the Garden of Eden was not an economy. You and I live in an economy. Why? Because in the Garden of Eden, there was an unlimited abundance, a supply. Now, listen to me. This is going to make sense in a little bit here. You're going to have one of those aha moments. Now, without scarcity, that's the key here. Without scarcity, okay, there is no need to economize. Are you getting a picture here? There's no need to economize. Without scarcity. This is the key right here. Without scarcity, there is no need to economize. In the Garden of Eden, we had production and distribution of goods and services, but God was the supplier in abundance. Everything depended upon the person of God. There was a system in place. God. But on earth, we have an economy. Very different. Do not confuse economics with economy. Those are two different concepts. And unfortunately, we tend to interchange those words. And when you interchange those words, you are interchanging concepts that cannot be interchanged. The biblical economics of the Garden of Eden was drastically different from the economical system that we have on earth. Here we have abundant supply, right here. Look at this. We have unlimited abundant supply in the Garden of Eden, as opposed to earth, okay, which we have is what? Scarcity. On earth, we have scarcity. That's the biggest difference. Be patient. This is going to make a lot of sense to you if you be patient through it. Follow the thinking here carefully with me. Without scarcity, there is no need to economize. You hear me? Therefore, something has to be true. We have no economics. In heaven, in the Garden of Eden, there was no scarcity. There was no scarcity here, okay? None. And because there was none, there is no economics. I got to let that sink in here for a moment. So I want you to see something with me, okay? I want you to really understand this, okay? So what is economics? See, I have to bounce back between what is economics and what is an economy. What is economics? Okay? There's a great British economist by the name of Lionel Robbins. Lionel Robbins, Lionel Robbins, Robbins, Lionel Robbins. He gave a classic definition of economics. This is what he said. Economics is the study of the use of scarce resources which have alternative uses. Let me take you through this. Let me take you through this because this is where I have found people have not understood. This is the reason why your people in your churches, they're not giving. The reason why your people in your churches are not tithing. They're not giving offering. They're not giving. They're not doing anything. They're sitting there expecting you to receive absolutely everything free, plus the 2 chickens they want from you that they promised to give to you. I want you to think about that for a moment with me. Okay? So economics. Okay. So let me put it this way. So economics. Sorry. Economics is the study, let me give it to you as a complete statement, of the use of scarce resources. Listen to this carefully. Economics. This is exactly where all of our people are struggling because they've not understood the issue. And if we in the pulpit, we the leaders of the church, do not understand this subject, we will always mislead our people. Perhaps not intentionally, but nevertheless we will result in doing the same thing, misleading them. Because you got people naming and claiming something in the heavenlies, naming and claiming something in the Garden of Eden that does not exist here on earth. So, economics is the study of the use of scarce. Again, we go back here. Scarcity, scarce resources, okay, which have alternative uses. This is a very key account that we're going to have to understand, because your people have to confront that truth, that reality every single day. This is why your ministries struggle. So what does the word scarce means? What does scarce mean, okay? So we have to ask that question. So what does scarce mean? That's the question, okay? So here, I'm going to give you a definition. It means that what everybody wants adds up to more than there is. Now, as I said to you in the beginning of our first class, okay, you should have downloaded your notes, but if you're not, I have it up here for you. Now listen to this carefully. What does scarcity mean? What does it mean to be scarce? Now just think about your village. Think about your town. Think about your city. Think about your country. Think about the jungle. Think about the mountain. Wherever it is that you find yourself, it doesn't matter. Economics works the same way all over the world. Okay? It means that what everybody, here's key, everybody wants, what they want adds up to more than there is. Everybody wants the same thing. The problem is there's not enough of it. So you and I have to operate under scarcity. Now that's not bad news. It's bad news if you don't understand how it works. That's the reason why I said to you that ignorance is deadly. Ignorance is costly. This is the reason why we can have 54 countries, 118 languages, 714 churches around the world, in the poorest countries of the world, and they're all doing the same thing. Number one, they've all purchased their own land with their own money. I don't send $1. Number two, they've all built their own church buildings with their own money. I don't send $1. Number three, they all have full-time paid pastor on staff with their own money. I don't send $1. And number four, they all teach the Word of God expositionally, verse by verse, for an hour to hour and a half in every single service. Why do they do that? To exactly get to this point, to understand what this is about. Okay? Now, this may seem like some simple thing to comprehend, but its implications are often grossly misunderstood, even by some of the most highly educated people in the world. For example, a feature article in the New York Times laid out the economic woes and the worries of the middle-class Americans. The middle-class Americans in our country, compared to the rest of the world, are very, very rich. Now, one of the most affluent groups of human beings ever to inhabit this planet is middle-class Americans. It's the most affluent group. It's absolutely astounding how many exist. And although this story includes a picture of a middle-class American family in their own swimming pool, the main headline read in the newspaper was this: "The American middle just getting by." That was the headline in the news. They're just getting by. In comparison to what? In comparison to who? And then they had other headings on the newspapers that read like this: "Wishes deferred and plans unmet." What? "Goals that remain just out of sight." Really? "Dogged savings and some luxuries." This is speaking about the richest single group, the American middle class. So it's incredible what we have. absolutely incredible. And yet it sees itself in the midst of a struggle. Listen to me, since I'm in the United States at the moment, so I'm addressing American pastors at the moment, okay? But the principles are the same all over the world. In short, middle-class Americans' desires, the desires of middle-class Americans exceed what they can comfortably afford. Even though what they already have would be considered unbelievable prosperity by people in many other countries around the world, or even by earlier generations of Americans, yet both they and the reporters regarded them as just getting by. In fact, there was a at the University of Harvard sociologist, okay, was quoted as saying how budget constrained these people really are. Are you kidding me? That the middle class is budget constrained. The problem is that we're living above our means. So we're not comprehending the issue. But it is not something that was man-made as a budget which constrains them. You know what it is? Reality constrains them. Let me put this up on the board. Reality constrains Ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what constrains all of us all over the world. The reality is what constrains us. It's not understanding what that reality is that's constraining us. Not comprehending it. It's what's held us back because of our ignorance. Again, not our intelligence. Reality constrains them. There has never been enough to satisfy everyone completely. Once the fall of Adam and Eve took place, once God closed the Garden of Eden, okay, once that was closed, unlimited, abundant supply, the reality is that there was always going to be a shortfall. There would never be enough to satisfy everybody's wants. There was never enough to satisfy everyone completely. That is the real constraint. That is what scarcity means. That there is never, ever enough to satisfy people. This is the reason why you speak to a poor person, he says, how much is enough? He says, there's never enough. You speak to a rich person, he tells you, how much is enough? He said, there's never enough. Everybody, from the poorest to the richest, always wants more. And that's what scarcity means. That the reality is there's never enough to satisfy everybody completely. The New York Times reported that one of the middle class families, they said this, quote unquote, got in over their heads in credit card spending, but then got their finances in order. But if we make a wrong move, according to Geraldine Fraser, said this, the pressure that we had from the bills will come back, and that is painful. This is the reason why you get all these people in the modern society. They get it, they'll run up these $20, $30, $40, $50, $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 worth of credit card bills, okay? And they get out of that hole and they go right back to it. Why? Because of that reality. There is never enough to completely satisfy them. That is what drives our people. Greed, avarice. I want more. I'm never satisfied. And you have to understand how this works. To all of these people, from academia to journalism, as well as the middle class people themselves, it apparently seems strange somehow that there should be such a thing as scarcity, and that this should imply a need for both productive efforts on their part and, God forbid, personal responsibility in spending the resulting income that they have. Yet nothing has been more pervasive in the history of the human race than scarcity, all the requirements of economizing that go with scarcity. See, economy economy means that we have to economize. Economize is because there's scarcity. We don't have enough. There's never going to be enough. Regardless of our policies, I don't care what country you find yourself in, regardless of our practices, regardless of our institutions, doesn't matter what country in, whether they are wise or unwise, whether they're noble or ignoble, okay, there is simply not enough to go around to satisfy all of our desires to the fullest. This is the key. All of our desires. Notice that I've never mentioned the word need. N-E-E-D. It's all of our wants and our desires that drives everything that takes place in our lives. Unmet needs are inherent in these circumstances. Whether we have a capitalist society, we have a socialist society, we have a feudal society, or we have any other kind of economy, it doesn't matter. These various kinds of economics, okay, of economies are just different institutional ways of making trade-offs that are inescapable in any economy. You're going to have to confront the reality. There is never enough to go around. That does not mean you have to be stuck there. There will never be enough, and the reason is because we violate the divine principles of the Word of God. That's the reason why we said earlier, and we spoke about this, and that there's seed time and harvest. Remember that in the book of Genesis in chapter 8? Where God said, he says, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. But God has given us a principle by which to operate, a principle by which to live by, a principle by which to honor the living God. Now, you can circumvent a lot of the realities if you live by the principles of the Word of God. The problem is we're not willing to live by the principles of the Word of God because we have this little thing called wants. W-A-N-T-S, wants. We have desires, D-I-S-I-R-E-S, desire. Our wants and our desires supersede our need. But you don't have to be where you are. But you are where you are because your wants and desires always supersedes your needs. And so once you move out of the need, out of the realm of the need, you step into the realm of the economy where scarcity exists. It doesn't mean that you have to stay there, but you are where you are because you've not understood how it works. God has given us all of the resources that we need. The problem is we don't know how to manage those resources. So as a result, we wind up in the hole that we're in. And we get caught into not understanding that economics is the study of the use of scarce resources which have alternative uses. This is going to make more sense a little bit in the next few classes. See, everything has a use, but it has alternative use. There's competition for it. You take plastic bottle. But plastic is in competition for 1,000 to, anyway, in fact, I looked it up. It's over 180,000 other uses for plastic. It's not just a plastic bottle. So the more uses for the same product, the more costly for the use of that plastic. And the more scarcity of that plastic, which drives the price, everything up. You see this everywhere, absolutely everywhere. I was in Haiti, and I could just see an entire river filled with plastic. And I looked at that and I said, wow, have we created our own scarcity? We have created our own scarcity. We have no idea of literally the millions of dollars that are just floating by the beach here, just sitting there collecting, doing nothing. In fact, it's costing us even more because once those plastics burn up under that sun, okay, it releases all the chemicals into the air. And yet we can see hundreds and hundreds of thousands of plastic everywhere. So you need to understand scarcity, and the reality that constrains us with regard to this issue.